South Florida. This is Vanessa Borge alongside Alex DeArmas. You're taking a look inside the Broward County courtroom. The jury has reached a decision in the sentencing trial for the Parkland shooter, Nikolas Cruz. The jury deliberated for about 7 hours yesterday. Day 2 began this morning around 9 a.m. It only took them 30 minutes this morning to reach that decision. We are awaiting that verdict to be read. It's supposed to be read in about 5 or 6 minutes from now. Those jurors have spent the last 3 months or so listening to that testimony from survivors and experts, and now they are tasked with deciding whether Nikolas Cruz either lives or dies. And as you can see, the family and friends there waiting more than 4.5 years for this day.
And live on your screen, a very similar view, something we have been seeing day after day for so many months. This all started back in July. It is October 13th, and this is the day those family members you see right there have been waiting for. You are seeing some of the family members of those who passed away in that awful massacre that took place on Marjory Stoneman Douglas back in 2018 on Valentine's Day, and you cannot help but wonder what these family members are feeling, what they're hoping for. We know that they're hoping for the death penalty, of course, but the emotions that they must be feeling right now, Vanessa, must be overwhelming.
And we've watched them in that gallery every day. Some of these family members have been here every single day since last October, when the confessed gunman pled guilty to all these charges, 17 counts of murder and then attempted murder, 17 counts of attempted murder as well. We're seeing the father of Jamie Guttenberg right there in the middle of your screen. He has been there every day. He has been waiting for this day. He's been very vocal that he wants to see Nikolas Cruz be put to death, and we'll find out what the jury decides in just a few minutes. We want to head over to Brandon Byer. He's been there throughout the morning. Brandon, what are you hearing? Have you spoken to family members? What are you hearing about the deliberations and now this final decision about to be read?
Well, the deliberations went quickly, 7 hours, and that's pretty fast when you talk about the magnitude of a death sentencing trial like this. Months of testimony, years since the trial, so rather since the crime, and then this jury is able to come to a decision, reach a verdict in 7 hours, so pretty quickly, and it's going to lean heavily to favor prosecutors and family members who, as you mentioned, want to see the shooter in this case sentenced to death. We haven't spoken with them yet. You asked, where they are in this right now. There's a podium set up not far from here, from where we're doing, our reporting in the hallway of just outside of the courtroom, where we've made it easy for them to, walk up to and react to the news that they're going to hear here in the next few minutes. I can tell you how they appear, and that is, you do see a look of relief on many of their faces. Most of the family members are here. I just saw Debbie Hickson, her son, walking in. Some have all been seated since about 9:30, right after news broke that the jury had reached a verdict in this case. And the judge is if there's any that are still, parking, trying to get up here, the judge and her court, they're gonna accommodate that. They're gonna give them a chance to be in here. This is what they've waited for many years now. So they're going to give them every opportunity to be able to get into that courtroom. I can see a few more still coming in as well. So don't be surprised if this is delayed even a bit beyond 10:30, which is when they said the jury or the verdict would be read. But some other dates here. I heard you mention that this trial has been going on since July, and when you think about it, it goes even back further than that. Jury selection started April 4th, so that's more than 6 months ago. That is an extremely lengthy amount of time when you're talking about a sentencing trial. As you mentioned, Alex, trial's official testimony started July 18th. That's when the state began building their case against Nikolas Cruz and why they say he should die for those awful crimes he committed back in 2018. And that went on for a couple of weeks. They didn't rest their case until August 4th. So now we're starting in April. State finally rests their case in August. Took a break, gave the jury a break, and then the defense had their turn, which went into September. The defense didn't rest their portion of this case until mid-September, as you take a look now at Nikolas Cruz, who has been brought in, and in the next few minutes is going to learn if he spends the rest of his life in prison or if he is sentenced to death for the murder of 17 people and the attempted murder of 17 others. The final date I want to go over with you earlier this month, October 6th. That's when the state, who had a chance to offer a rebuttal after hearing what defense attorneys had presented to jurors. They had one more chance to kind of basically wrap up their case. That ended on October 6th. Closing arguments were this week, and really the quickest process of the entire sentencing trial for Nikolas Cruz was the deliberation. And it took that jury just 7 hours of sitting in that jury room to decide if he's going to live or die for this, for these crimes. And experts will tell you, the quicker the verdict, the less favor for the defendant. And in this case, he's already pled guilty, so that's not even in question. This is, does he spend his life in prison, or will he be sent to death row? Looks heavily like that's going to be the case in this, and especially when you consider what the jury wanted to hear. They asked for some readbacks yesterday, heard about half an hour's worth, raised their hand and told the judge, we've heard enough. Went back to deliberate for another hour and a half or so, then asked for the gun to be sent back, wanted to see it for themselves. That took some time, so the judge sent them to their hotel where they're sequestered. They spent one night there, came back at 9 o'clock this morning. That gun was waiting for them in the jury room. The firing pin had been removed for safety. They spent about 20 minutes doing whatever it is they needed to see or touch or feel, hold that weapon, and then made their decision. So the verdict was supposed to be read at about 10:30. We're already right there. Last few people making their way into the courtroom at this point. The defendant, Nikolas Cruz, is there. The court, her staff is there. Family members, of course, there. And we should be very close to learning what that shooter's fate is at this morning.
And Brandon, it's important to also mention all the emotional testimonies those jurors had to endure and listen to. The jurors spent the past 86 days listening to that testimony from survivors, from the family members of those who were killed there in the school. They also, remember, walked the 3-story building where this horrific act happened. They walked in the footsteps that Nikolas Cruz took that day. So 7 hours of deliberating, Brandon, and important to remember everything they heard, all the emotions they went through in the last months.
And Alex, and they got to, you know, in their impact statements, they got to address the court and talk about, you know, what this last 4.5 years has been like for them. Listening to the testimony, they heard cell phone videos of the act ongoing. At some point, you know, you saw family members actually having to excuse themselves from the courtroom because it was, you know, just too much, really, to hear the gunfire, to hear the screams, the 911 calls. So while some chose to, you know, try to be there for the loved one that they lost, some of that testimony that you mentioned was just too much. But they did. Someone from each family did get up, sit there, and give that impact statement, which was essentially their turn to tell the jury what life has been like for them since that dreadful day. And that was tough. I mean, you saw defense attorneys, you know, crying during that moment. Jurors cried. People in the gallery, you know, obviously crying. There were people reaching out, hands on the shoulder of the person in front of them, because just having to hear you know, what these families have gone through, safe to say that there weren't many dry eyes in that courtroom when all that took place. Now, the jury was told they're not to consider those impact statements, so they have to stick to the evidence when they make their decision, the decision that's been made, and we hopefully will learn here in the next couple of minutes. But while they did hear from the family members and the grief that they've been through, that's something they're told to put to the side. They have to stick to what was presented to them in the courtroom as they make their decision.
And Brandon, we know their verdict must be unanimous in order for the death penalty to be imposed. Each of the 17 counts are going to be considered individually, so we're going to hear each name, each victim's number. They're going to be associated with a number as well, going to be read off. So each charge is going to be considered individually. So they're going to have to make the decision 17 times. It takes only one unanimous vote for death on one charge for Cruz to get that sentence. I want to bring in our 7 News legal analyst, Howard Finkelstein, to talk a little bit about that portion of it. Howard, a lot of people think it's just, if one juror decides, life in prison, then that's the case. But this is 17 different charges that they have to decide unanimously.
That is correct. There are 17 separate verdicts, and it will require at least one juror to vote for life in all of the 17 in order to prevent a death sentence. It will only require a unanimous verdict on one of the victims in order for a death sentence to come forth.
Howard, talk to us a little bit more about aggravating factors. We keep hearing that word. The jury very familiar with what this is. Can you give us a recap of exactly what they mean, what the jury is looking for, and how important they are in this decision?
Yes. What the law tries to do is come up with a procedure that allows a jury to have a justified verdict of death. And what the law does, it says not all murders are equal. Some are more horrific than others. The aggravating factors are where the murder becomes more or worse than your typical murder, for lack of a better word. The aggravators that are really at play here are what's called cold, calculated, and premeditated. And the state proved that easily because of the videos that the defendant made, the practice, the accumulation of the weapons and bullets and everything that he needed. But where juries usually come forward with a death sentence is on the aggravator of what lawyers call HAC, heinous, atrocious, and cruel. And that's going to center on the 3 victims that were shot and then lived, but saw others killed and then saw the gunman coming toward them, knowing that their death was imminent. That raises the level of horror. And if this jury does come forward with a death sentence, I believe it will be based on at least the 3 victims who received multiple gunshots, that were alive after the first bullet hit them, and they knew they were going to die and that the last moments of their life were filled with terror. That's usually what motivates a jury to vote for death.
And Howard, it was a quick deliberation. The jury asked for certain testimony to be read back to them. They also asked to see the rifle that was used in the massacre. What does that tell you about their deliberations?
It sounds to me like they wanted to make sure that the fetal alcohol syndrome defense that the defense put forward wasn't valid. And they requested the readback of the cross-examination of the defense expert and the direct cross-examination of the state's expert. They centered it on this tapping test, which is a test that's used to determine if there's neurologic deficits. So if someone has fetal alcohol syndrome, they should have neurologic deficits. And that would manifest in an inability to operate this particular rifle, to engage in the dexterity and coordination required to do what he did in that school. My guess is they heard that testimony and in all likelihood rejected it. And even if they accepted it, they may not have accepted it to the extent that it will override the aggravating factors of heinous, atrocious, and cruel, and cold, calculated, and premeditated.
Very important to note, Howard, because that is what the defense has been claiming this entire time. We've seen the defense team try to display the horrors that have happened to Nikolas Cruz during his lifetime, while the state has made its case in proving the horrors Nikolas Cruz has committed to our community. Now, this is a moment, Howard, our community, but the world has been waiting for, because as we've mentioned, this has never happened before. This entire team, everyone that we have been seeing, the judge, the attorneys, the court system, this is a task that has never been faced by a U.S. jury. No American mass shooter who killed at least 17 people have ever made it to trial. And Howard, I remember you saying when this all started, there's no blueprint to this. Can you talk about the difficulty and the difficulties the attorneys have faced in the past years?
For the defense, when something like this happens, and you're 100% correct, this has never happened before in the United States or anywhere in the world where a mass shooter killed 17 people in a school and went on trial. So for the defense, they didn't have any place to look where somebody had defended somebody doing something like this and they could learn from it. This was a path that was blazed by both the prosecution and the defense, and there was really nowhere to look for advice, for counsel. The defense knew from the very beginning that there had never been a case with this much horror, this much destruction, and they knew it was an uphill climb. Juries would look for a reason, especially if the defendant is very young and has had a difficult or traumatic childhood. That usually can tweak somebody's heart to say, yes, this is awful, but I understand what happened, and he's not the worst of the worst. And that's what the death penalty is for. Not for every murder, but for the worst of the worst. It's very hard to overcome the destruction of 17 families. And the argument that the state put forward is there are many people that have fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, and they don't go and shoot and kill people. And I think that's where the jury probably went back there and discussed, yes, he may have had these problems. He may have suffered this way. Maybe he wasn't diagnosed appropriate or received the correct treatment. That said, the aggravators are so outrageous, so overwhelming. The pain and the loss and the destruction so severe that any mitigating factor is going to be dwarfed by that.
And Howard, if Nikolas Cruz is sentenced to death today, what can we expect from the defense? We imagine it's going to be an appeal and go to the Supreme Court?
Oh, yes. If there is a sentence of death, first you're going to see the defense file a motion for a new trial based upon errors that occurred in the trial. Then there will be an appeal, which will probably take a good year before both sides can finalize their briefs, and it will go to the Florida Supreme Court. The Florida Supreme Court will then scrutinize every fact, every argument, every ruling by a judge, and if there were errors that had an impact on what the jury decided, they could reverse the case, and the case could be retried. If they do not reverse the case, then a whole new set of appeals, what they call a collateral attack, post-conviction motion, which will attack the performance of the judge and the defense lawyers. There'll be a lot of litigation as to the decisions the defense lawyers made in strategy, whether they made the right objections or they failed to make the right objections. You're talking about a minimum of 10 years worth of appeals and maybe even up to 20 years.
Howard, as we wait for this verdict to finally be read, you can't help but go back to that day, back on Valentine's Day of 2018, and remember the images that we saw on our end. You can't help but wonder and feel for those family members, and now you can't help but feel for those jurors who had to listen to so many painful memories and testimonies. We've mentioned, Howard, that these jurors will not be given any counseling after this experience, something other states do offer. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you could expect from these jurors, maybe perhaps personally, and also how important it was that these jurors will not remain anonymous once this is over? I'm sure that played a huge factor in all of this as well.
Absolutely. Florida is one of the states that does not provide psychological counseling for jurors that go through this experience. And my guess is, as a result of this, you might see a new law in Florida so that going forward, juries won't be left in the lurch without that counseling. I can tell you that what these jurors went through will change them. They will never be the same people that they were before. The videos that they saw that the public did not see were images that when you experience them and see them, it changes you. It's not like what many people think, that it was like a shooting arcade and a video game where it was just bang, bang, and people fell down. That's not what happened. You're talking about the obliteration of the human body. You're talking about the destruction of human beings in a way in which the only thing you can analogize it to is war. It's the only place where you would see that type of destruction. And then there's the third part. It's very difficult. A lot of people who say, I'm for the death penalty or against the death penalty, it's easy to take opinions and talk about it around the dinner table. But when you actually have to go into a room and sign your name on a piece of paper that sentences another human being to death, even if they've done awful things, make no mistake about it, it is very impactful, and they will carry this every day for the rest of their life.
Howard, you talked a bit about the appellate phase if this does go to an appeal, and it likely will if he is sentenced to death. It could take 10, 20 years. So when would he be put to death if it does get through the appellate phase and then it is determined that he should be put to death? When would that potentially happen? Because that's what these family members, so many of them, have said they are waiting for, to finally have that closure.
They're going to have to wait for many, many years. The appeals, 10 years minimum, up to 20 years. When all the appeals are exhausted, then the governor can sign the death warrant, and then it can move forward fairly quickly at that point. But unfortunately for these families who desire the death sentence, this wait is going to go on very long. And unfortunately as well, from what I've heard from other victim families, even when the execution is carried out, if it is, closure is not what happens. There is no closure when you've lost your child or your husband or your wife. There is no closure. This case destroyed people's lives, and they cannot ever be rebuilt, not on this earthly plane.
All right, Howard Finkelstein, we will check in with you momentarily. Again, if you are just joining us right now, this is the moment so many have been waiting for. The verdict has been reached in Nikolas Cruz's life or death sentencing trial. We are waiting for that to be read at any moment now. You've been seeing family members there sitting, patiently waiting, anxious, nervous. You can just imagine the emotions they are feeling. Some wanting the death penalty. Others have expressed that life in prison would be worse and more appropriate punishment. Mixed emotions. Earlier you saw Scott Beagle's mom, what appeared to be her phone, because we saw a screensaver with Scott's photo on it. At least that's what it looked like from here. We saw Alyssa Aladef's father, mother, grandmother. We've seen so many of the family members that we have seen day after day right there just waiting. Seven's Vanessa Medina is also there in the Broward County Courthouse, also watching this with us. Vanessa, what have you been hearing today? What have you been seeing?
Well, just behind me, this is where the families will come out after this verdict is read. But Howard's saying just that. Lives have been destroyed. Will there be closure for these families? I think the end of this trial, when I've spoken to these families, they just want this to be over with. They want this part of their lives to be done with. Regardless of what this verdict is, it's very different for many of them. We have spoken to them throughout the years, but many just want to not hear the name Nikolas Cruz anymore. This man has destroyed their lives. He was just 19 at the time. You're looking at him right now. He's destroyed so many lives in this community. You're taking a look at him day in and day out. He has come into the courtroom wearing similar outfits, looking a bit disheveled, and now the judge, I believe, is coming in, and the jurors will be coming in. They will be reading this verdict shortly, but what he has done has destroyed this community, and now these 12 jurors will be tasked with the huge task of deciding whether or not he will live or die. This is a big task. You've seen throughout the morning the families there lining up in this courtroom. This is a packed courtroom, and I guess we will start listening in.
Verdict in this case. Are both sides ready to bring in the jurors?
State's ready, Your Honor.
Defense?
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
Okay.
Jurors are entering. All jurors are present.
Okay, the jurors are present. Everyone else may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my understanding that you have reached a verdict in this case. Mr. Thomas, you're the foreperson?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you please pass the verdict forms to the bailiff? All of the verdict forms have been properly executed and dated and signed by the foreperson. At this time, I'm going to publish the verdicts. The State of Florida versus Nikolas Cruz, verdict form as to count 1. We, the jury, find as follows as to Nikolas Cruz in this case. Aggravating factors as to count 1, victim Luke Hoyer. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Luke Hoyer was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Luke Hoyer was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Luke Hoyer was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible death sentence. Yes. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances. No. Signed October 13th by the foreperson. Mr. Benjamin. Verdict form as to count 2, victim Martin Duque. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Martin Duque Anquiano was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Martin Duque Anquiano was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Martin Duque Anquiano was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. one or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence? Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established as to count 2, Martin Duque and Quiano. No. Signed and dated by the foreperson, Mr. Benjamin Thomas. Count 3, Gina Montalto. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another felony, capital felony, or of a felony involving the use of threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Gina Montalto was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Gina Montalto was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Gina Montalto was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. No. Signed and dated by the foreperson, Mr. Benjamin Thomas. Count 4, Alexander Schachter. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Alexander Schachter was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Alexander Schachter was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Alexander Schachter was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Eligibility for the death penalty. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established as to count 4. No. Signed and dated October 13th, foreperson Benjamin Thomas. Verdict form as to count 5, Elena Petty. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Elena Petty was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Elena Petty was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has proven beyond the reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Elena Petty was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors finds that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. Eligibility for the death penalty as to Elena Petty. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. No. Signed and dated October 13th by the foreperson, Mr. Benjamin Thomas. Count 6, victim Alyssa Al-Hadef. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Alyssa Al-Hadef was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor the first-degree murder of Alyssa Al-Hadef was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor the first-degree murder of Alyssa Al-Hadef was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond the reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors finds that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. As to Alyssa Al-Hadef, no. Signed and dated October 13th by the foreperson Benjamin Thomas. Count 7, Nikolas Cruz. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Nikolas Cruz was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Nikolas Cruz was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor the first-degree murder of Nikolas Cruz was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. Eligibility for the death penalty as to Nikolas Cruz. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. No. Signed, October 13th, foreperson Benjamin Thomas. Verdict form as to count 8, Helena Ramsey. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Helena Ramsey was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Helena Ramsey was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Helena Ramsey was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. Eligibility for the death penalty as to Helena Ramsey. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. No. Signed and dated October 13th, 2022 by foreperson Benjamin Thomas. Aggravating factors as to verdict form as to count 9, victim Christopher Hickson. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Christopher Hickson was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor, the first-degree murder of Christopher Hickson, was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Christopher Hickson was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Christopher Hickson was committed to disrupt or hinder the lawful exercise of any governmental function or the enforcement of the laws. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Christopher Hickson was an appointed public official engaged in the performance of his official duties. If the motive for the first-degree murder was related in whole or in part to Christopher Hickson's official capacity. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances. No. Signed and dated October 13th, foreperson Benjamin Thomas. Verdict as to count 10, Carmen Shentra. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person? Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Carmen Shentrup was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor the first-degree murder of Carmen Shentrup was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor the first-degree murder of Carmen Shentrup was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. Eligibility for the death penalty as to victim Carmen Shentrup. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. No. Signed, October 13th, foreperson, Benjamin Thomas. Count 11, Aaron Feist, victim Aaron Feist. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor Nikolas Cruz created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Aaron Feist was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor the first-degree murder of Aaron Feist was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Aaron Feist was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor the first-degree murder of Aaron Feist was committed to disrupt or hinder the lawful exercise of any governmental function or the enforcement of laws. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor Aaron Feist was was an appointed public official engaged in the performance of his official duties if the motive for first-degree murder was related in whole or in part to Aaron Feist's official capacity? Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors finds that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. Eligibility for the death penalty as to count 11, Aaron Feist. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. No. Signed this 13th day of October, foreperson Benjamin Thomas. Verdict as to count 11, victim Scott Beagle. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Scott Beagle was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Scott Beagle was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Scott Beagle was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Scott Beagle was committed to disrupt or hinder the lawful exercise of any government function or the enforcement of laws. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Scott Beagle was an appointed public official engaged in the performance of his official duties if the first-degree murder was related in whole or in part to Scott Beagle's official capacity. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. Eligibility for the death penalty as to count 12, victim Scott Beagle. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. No. Signed October 13th, foreperson Benjamin Thomas. Verdict form as to count 13, Meadow Pollock. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Meadow Pollock was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Meadow Pollock was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor the first-degree murder of Meadow Pollock was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. Shh. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established as to Meadow Pollock. No. Signed, October 13th, foreperson Benjamin Thomas. Jury verdict form as to victim Kara Loughran. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Kara Loughran was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor the first-degree murder of Kara Loughran was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor the first-degree murder of Kara Loughran was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death, yes. One or more individual jurors finds that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence, yes. Eligibility for the death penalty as to victim Kara Loughran. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established as to Kara Loughran. No. Signed, Benjamin Thomas, October 13th, 2022. Count 15, victim Joaquin Oliver. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor that the first-degree murder of Joaquin Oliver was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Joaquin Oliver was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Joaquin Oliver was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible death sentence. Yes. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. Eligibility for the death penalty as to victim Joaquin Oliver. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. No. Dated October 13th, foreperson Benjamin Thomas. Verdict form as to count 16, victim Jamie Gutenberg. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes.
All right, so you can see that we're having some audio issues here as the judge was going to continue to talk about the Jamie Gutenberg's charges and what the jury decide on this victim. This is the 16th victim that we were hearing from. We're all anticipating to hear what's next. We're trying to get this audio back so that we can continue to listen. But so far, so far, it seems like it is life in prison.
So
as of right now,
all the jurors have recommended life in prison, not the death penalty, in all the counts we've heard so far. So we've heard 15 counts fully so far. We were in the middle of Jamie Guttenberg. She was the 16th count. And then we're waiting for Peter Wang as well. That's going to be the 17th count against Nikolas Cruz. But so far in those 15 counts, the jurors have recommended life in prison, not the death penalty. At least one of the jurors found mitigating circumstances outweighing the aggravated factors. So essentially the aggravating factors are what the prosecution had to prove. That's when they had to prove heinous, atrocious, and it was a cruel act. They had to prove that it was cold, calculated, and premeditated. What essentially this reading is saying, what the recommendation is that Nikolas Cruz deserves to spend the rest of his days in prison, not the death penalty, because they believe that at least one juror in the jury believes that mitigating circumstances outweighed the aggravating factors. So mitigating circumstances are going to be something like the fetal alcohol syndrome that the defense has been trying to prove throughout this sentencing trial.
Right. They are factors that tend to lessen the severity of a crime or its punishment. Let's listen in quickly.
That the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established. As to Jamie Guttenberg, no. Signed, Benjamin Thomas, October 13th, 2022. Count 17, Peter Wang. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nikolas Cruz knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Peter Wang was committed while Nikolas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Peter Wang was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Peter Wang was committed in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner, without any pretense of moral or legal justification. Yes. Reviewing the aggravating factors that we unanimously found to be established beyond a reasonable doubt, we, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors are sufficient to warrant a possible sentence of death. Yes. One or more individual jurors find that one or more mitigating circumstances was established by the greater weight of the evidence. Yes. Eligibility for the death penalty as to Peter Wang. We, the jury, unanimously find that the aggravating factors that were proven beyond a reasonable doubt outweigh the mitigating circumstances established as to count 17, Peter Wang. No. October 13th, 2022, signed by foreperson Benjamin Thomas. Madam Clerk, would you please poll the jurors?
Mr. Thomas, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Tony De Vega, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Stephen Croft, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Jimmy Benbow, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Andrew Johnson, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Yes. Annette Sanchez, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Stacy Lezing, Jim, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Melody Van O, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Mirel Rinkus, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Dimitri Bahara, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Gabriel Figueroa, is this your verdict?
Yes.
And Denise, is it Conho? Is this your verdict? Yes. Thank you.
Members of the jury, I wish to thank you for your time and consideration in this case. I also wish to advise you of the following. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. Your deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain your private affair if that's what you wish. Therefore, the law gives you the privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak with anyone about your deliberations, you're also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, the attorneys, or elsewhere. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. At this time, the sheriff's office is going to escort the jurors out of the courtroom. Okay, the defendant, having previously been adjudicated of 17 counts of murder in the first degree, the jury having returned a verdict of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Is there any legal reason why I should not impose a sentence at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
And that is under 921.143, the victims under counts 1 through 17, and also the surviving victims of the attempted homicides have a right to express themselves as to the everything that could not be expressed under victim impact. They can express themselves as to crime and what they think should have been the appropriate disposition and sentence. That is, it is anticipated that that could be a lengthy sentencing hearing because it applies to all 34 counts of the indictment.
Okay, are you prepared to present that testimony now?
No, we're not, Your Honor. And under the statute, it says that the victims have a right to present that testimony, and also, as you know, under the Florida Constitution, the victims have a right to be heard, and that the victim should present that testimony before you announce sentence.
Okay, when can we do that on November 1st, which is a Tuesday?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I'll reset the sentencing for November 1st, Tuesday at 9 a.m. So the defendant will remain in the custody of the Broward Sheriff's Office until such time as he's sentenced.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is there anything else for today?
Nothing from the defense, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. We're in recess.
And the verdict is in. It has been read. Nikolas Cruz sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Let's go straight to our legal analyst, Howard Finkelstein. Howard, your reaction.
This jury obviously thought long and hard during these past few months about what they were hearing. It took a lot of courage for a jury to not give those families who lost their children the verdict that they wanted. It seems to me that they listened to the expert testimony, and I think what they really heard was this person was out of control from his very, very earliest years, was never diagnosed properly, was never treated properly, and then when he got to school, all of the systems that should have been a safety net to protect others failed. The school system failed, the law enforcement system failed, the mental health system failed. Everybody knew he was a time bomb ready to go off, and nobody did what they should have done. And I think the jury heard that, and they also looked at him and saw somebody very young, somebody that maybe looked like their child. And it's very hard to sentence a young person to death. I will be very interested in the weeks to come when we hear from the jurors what they actually thought. But this is it's a sign of courage by the jury. It's a verdict that is not going to be received well by many. It will be received by some as the right verdict, but many will be angry. This case has ripped this community apart. I'm hoping that now that the trial is over, the healing can begin.
Howard, we heard at the end the judge saying, is there any reason why I shouldn't hand down my sentence right now? And then you heard the prosecution say yes, 34 counts of the indictment. They want those victim impact statements. They want their testimony they want to present their testimony, and she scheduled the trial to continue, the sentencing trial to continue on November 1st. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That is, the purpose of victim impact testimony is so that those who suffered don't feel like they don't have a voice, because most of the parents didn't testify because they didn't have any relevant evidence as to what was being tried in front of the jury. And when you suffer like these people suffered, and then they don't have a voice, the ability to speak to the public on the record, that's another victimization. So, yes, it's important that they be heard, because I think all of us, our hearts go out to them. Nobody should ever experience what these people experienced.
A lot of emotions right now being felt across South Florida and across our nation, Howard. Another question for you. You explained to us the aggravating factors and the role they play. We heard it over and over again as the judge was reading the verdict. Can you talk to us about the mitigating circumstances? Are we talking about the fetal alcohol syndrome primarily, or, like you said, the fact that so many different people failed Nikolas Cruz?
I think it's a combination of both. The jury was very clear that the state carried their burden and proved beyond a reasonable doubt several aggravating factors, including the big ones that we talked about: heinous, atrocious, and cruel, cold, calculated, and premeditated. But most people, default position is going to be life. A jury is only going to go to death if they believe that there was no reason, no explanation for how this person became what they became. And I think this jury heard how debilitated this individual was from the moment he was in the womb, even before he was born. The testimony from the biological mother's friend that was a co-prostitute with her, that watched her ingest a lot of crack, a lot of alcohol. And when the jury heard that, I think their heart was tweaked that this individual never had a chance. He never had a chance from the moment that he was born. He was a broken machine, and he got more and more broken, more and more frustrated, more and more angry. And if anybody whose job it was to oversee mental health, education, or law enforcement had done what they should have done, he would never have been in that school. And had he not been in that school, all of those kids would be alive today.
Howard, earlier this morning, so many people were speculating that the jury perhaps wanted to see the rifle so that they can further evaluate whether coordination was needed in order to operate such a powerful rifle, which would have led to the jury siding with the state's argument. What do you think now instead happened in those deliberations?
You know, I'm not sure. When I heard them requested the rifle, I assumed it was to see if it required dexterity. I think they probably went back there and realized that it doesn't require sophisticated or nuanced dexterity or coordination. I'm just guessing on this. It also could be that there was one juror that had questions and the other jurors decided, okay, let's take a look at it. But that's going to be an interesting question to ask them. One of the things that I've experienced in doing this for 44 years is each jury takes on its own identity, a groupthink mentality. And often they do things for reasons that none of us who are not in the jury would ever think of. I have been surprised more by juries' reasonings than anything else. And I think the truth is going to come out over the next few weeks when they start to speak. But right now, we're just guessing. I think that people who watched this and only focused on the horror didn't get the full picture. The defense did an extraordinary job. They brought in the top experts in the nation on fetal alcohol syndrome disorder. They were able to bring out, it's what the defense calls humanizing the defendant. In other words, fleshing him out, making them see who he was and how he became what he did. And when people have an answer as to how someone became what they did, there's less fear and less willingness to kill them. It's the fear that you just do not understand how a human being got to this place. That's usually when a jury will return a sentence of death. But we really do need to wait to hear from the jury.
Yeah, Howard, thank you for that. And as Howard mentioned, that was the goal of the defense, to humanize Nikolas Cruz. Not only did we hear from those powerful professional witnesses and what they had to say, we also heard from his half-sister. We also heard, if you remember, from the friend of his biological mother, who was able to explain what his biological mother would do when she was pregnant with Nikolas Cruz. I mean, we got so many different descriptions from both sides, the state and the defense. And as Howard mentioned, as the days go on, I'm sure we will get more insight as to what the jury was thinking and what they took into consideration leading up to today's verdict.
And that verdict being life in prison. Nikolas Cruz will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Obviously, a lot of emotions in that courtroom. We saw the family members crying, holding hands, shaking their heads, a look of anger on their faces. We have Vanessa Medina. She is at the courthouse right now. Vanessa, you just received a statement from family members about the verdict.
Yes, I will share that with you in just a moment. But while the defense, you heard Howard say, may have humanized him, to these families, Nikolas Cruz is a monster. He took their loved one. What he did that day was the act of an animal. And so while the defense may have done its job in humanizing him for these families, they will never get their loved one back. This day, 2018 Valentine's Day, it was a massacre. And that's exactly what he did to these families, and that's exactly what he did to this community. So Stand with Parkland has just released a statement. It says today's ruling may yet was yet another gut punch for so many of us who devastatingly lost our loved ones on that tragic Valentine's Day at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. This was said by Tony Montalto, the father of Gina Montalto. He's also the president of Stand With Parkland. If you remember from testimony, Gina Montalto sadly was shot with that AR-15 at close range. So Nikolas Cruz physically had to put that gun on her chest and shoot her. I believe it was 4 extra times. He went on to say that 17 beautiful lives were cut short by murder, and the monster that killed them gets to live to see another day. While this sentence fails to punish the perpetrator to the fullest extent of the law, it will not stop our mission to effect positive change at a federal, state, and local level to prevent school shooting tragedies from shattering other American families. Now, we know that many of these families, their life's work is now changed forever. They're out standing for reform on gun laws. They have changed their lives, many of them. Lori Alhadeff, now on the Broward County School Board. Debbie Hickson, also now on the Broward County School Board. Their life now is trying to make positive change, something positive out of something so heinous. So what were these jurors thinking? You know, we heard Howard explain it. Did these aggravating outweigh the mitigating? And basically, was his mental state, they could not, the aggravating did not outweigh what was going on mentally. And so that's how they ruled, again, life behind bars for Nikolas Cruz for that 2018 massacre here in Parkland. This community has been changed forever. These families have been changed forever. They're expected to come out and speak at this podium behind me. It's unclear what's going on in their minds. We did see them hugging, crying, many of them just putting their hands in their faces. The culmination of 4 years of living this nightmare, then having to come here for the last 3 months, listen to testimony, hear how their child was tragically, viciously, cold, calculated, murdered, has got to be the hardest thing that a parent ever has to do in their lives. So these families have just gone through so much. We will give them some grace when they do come out here, if they do want to speak. But I'm sure the question so many of them have in their minds, what does it take to give someone the death penalty? Was this not heinous enough? Was this not callous enough? So many of them having a lot of questions. I'm sure they're consoling each other at this time because they know what each other's going through. At this time, we've spoken to so many of these parents over the years, and what they have said is they just wanted this stage to be over. They wanted the trial to be over. They didn't want to relive it. Many of them sitting in this courtroom every single day. We saw the Dorettes. Their son, Nicholas, the swimmer, was also tragically murdered. We saw them sitting here practically every single day. This was a packed courtroom. They were waiting and have been waiting for this verdict for 4 years. And while many of them, this is not the verdict they wanted, we do know, we had spoken to some parents that they felt that life behind bars is a worse sentence than giving him the easy way out and giving him death. So, of course, many emotions here in Broward County. This nightmare for many of them is not closure. It doesn't bring an end to their suffering. It prolongs it. And so what will happen next? We did hear that now the parents do want to address Nikolas Cruz for this. The formal sentencing will not take place today. That will take place over the next few weeks. I'm not sure if they gave a date yet, but these parents will be able to look at Nikolas Cruz in the eye and tell him exactly the harm that he caused their families, the harm that he caused this community. And Broward County was changed that day, on that February day of 2018. It will never be the same, and it will never be the same for these families again. So for many here in Broward County, it was a tragic day. It was a tragic day that will live in infamy, just like that tragic day in 2018 where we saw this community change forever. So again, 12 jurors deciding that Nikolas Cruz, instead of getting the death penalty, will now live out his life behind bars without parole. So a devastating day for many. As soon as the families come out here, we'll bring it to you live. We'll listen to some of that reaction, but just a very tough day here in Broward County. Back to you guys.
And Vanessa, while you wait for reaction from there, we see the podium set up behind you. We've been checking social media and still no reaction there. Fred Guttenberg, very vocal, announced that the verdict was read. Or was reached, I should say, but has not yet reacted. Brandon Byer, are you getting any reaction on your end?
I don't think we're going to hear from the families today. We are watching them walk out of the courtroom, and it is absolute somberness they're in shock. I don't think anyone saw this as the outcome. We had been working with them, in the days leading up to this, for a way for them to make their way into that months, a podium for them. I think they thought this was going to be their moment to start to put what they can of this behind them, and that didn't happen today. You could feel the wind being sucked out of that courtroom as each count was read. And it took more than an hour to read several pages for each of the 17 victims. You know what? Someone is heading back into the media room, so I'm sure Vanessa will keep it. It was Lori? It was Lori? Okay. Lori Alhadeff might have something to say. She just walked past us into the media room, so I'll toss it back to you guys. So as you see her approach that podium, we can listen. That might be the first parent we hear from, but she did just walk back into the media room.
Brandon Byer, we're going to head over to Nicole Ensalada. She's also at the courthouse for us this afternoon. I'm sure you've seen the reactions of those in the courthouse. Nicole, shock and anger on so many of the faces.
Yeah, that is what we are seeing, and we're talking about a jury of 7 men and 5 women, 12 people, and I can tell you that it was a little confusing because the instructions were pretty lengthy, and so you would listen to the judge go through all of the questions that these jurors had to answer, and the one thing to remember is that it only took one juror to say that those aggravating factors did not outweigh the mitigating factors. We do not know how many jurors actually felt that way. We do know, though, it was more than one, or at least one. And that is why, even after going through all of the aggravating factors, that is what they had decided. I understand we've got someone there at the courthouse. Let's go ahead and listen in.
My name is Lori Alhadeff. This is my husband, Dr. Elon Alhadeff. And our daughter was Alyssa Alhadeff, who was brutally murdered on February 14, 2018. We are beyond disappointed with the outcome today. This should have been the death penalty, 100%. 17 people were brutally murdered on February 14, 2018. I sent my daughter to school, and she was shot 8 times. I am so beyond disappointed and frustrated with this outcome. I do not understand. I just don't understand this. Dr. Alhadeff.
I'm disgusted with our legal system. I'm disgusted with those jurors. I'm disgusted with the system. That you can allow 17 dead and 17 others shot and wounded and not give the death penalty. What do we have the death penalty for? What is the purpose of it? You set a precedent today. You set a precedent for the next mass killing, and nothing happens to you. You'll get life in jail. I'm sorry. That is not okay. As a country, we need to stand up and say that's not okay. I pray that that animal suffers every day of his life in jail. And he should have a short life.
4 years you've been living this nightmare, and it's just, there's never going to be any closure. But this really wasn't the outcome you wanted.
No, I mean, definitely not. I mean, it's been almost 5 years. We came here today, and it wasn't even a doubt in my mind that this would be the death penalty. I'm beyond disgusted of what happened, what occurred, and again, what is the death penalty for, if not for the murder and killing of 17 people?
What would you ask jurors? What would you ask them if they were right here in front of you?
What were you thinking? This isn't about your personal beliefs. It's not about your religious values. It's about the heinous crime that was committed. There is no recovery. Jail's about rehabbing someone. There is no rehabbing.
Is there any sense of relief that at least you don't have to come to court anymore? At least you don't have to see this guy anymore?
Doesn't matter at this point.
And
we still have to go to the cemetery to go see our daughter.
Do you think there was somebody on the jury, at least one person who, from the get-go, would vote for life, no matter what the evidence showed?
Probably.
Laura, you guys had to sit there for nearly 50 minutes and listen to them go count by count. Can you tell us what those moments were like?
We sat there for over 12 hours waiting to find out our child was dead. And we just sat there being tortured by another hour waiting.
This idea of the mitigating factors being his mental illness or this alcohol-induced syndrome, that did not outweigh the aggravating did not outweigh the fact that he may have been mentally ill. What does that mean to you?
So that means that everyone that has a mental illness should go on a killing spree? That's what we're telling this society? That we're saying that's okay because you have a mental illness? Mental illness isn't cured. And he had antisocial personality disorder, amongst others, oppositional defiant disorder, but it doesn't give him the right to go and kill 17 children, 17 people. And I'm sorry, this is just not okay.
Were you okay with how the state prosecuted the case? Or do you think they could have done anything different to elicit a different sentence?
I think the state did a great job. I think they did what they could. We're very thankful for them. Unfortunately, the system continues to fail us.
Would you say today's a tragic day in Broward County?
It's a stain. I'm sorry. It's just a stain, and I live here. It's a stain on this world that we live in. Broward County. It's really just a real
disappointment.
Disappointment.
Have you been robbed of justice? Have you been robbed of justice?
Absolutely. Absolutely have.
Would you say the state let your daughter down?
Yes. The jurors let us down. We have a jury system for a reason, and they let us down. They gave their personal beliefs, but they didn't go by the evidence. There was no mitigating factors. I'm sorry. Any mitigation was disproven clearly in the court. There's no reason, and if there is a reason, then why are we allowing people to just go randomly kill others? Is that what we're telling our society? But there's mitigating factors, a lot of hogwash.
Do you think Cruz should have been locked up long before February 14, 2018, at least in a mental institution or something along those lines?
Locked up, yes. Mental or otherwise, I don't know what the right thing is, but he should have been locked up. He should have been in shackles every time he came into the court. He should have been in shackles the entire time he was there. He's not a human being, he's an animal.
Laura, in the last 4 years, you guys have done so much work. Alyssa's law, what you've been doing in the school board. What is this here's where you guys can redouble your efforts outside of the courtroom. I mean, what's next?
So I would say that it just makes the fire inside us even want to fight harder for change and know that we have to do so much more to prevent the next school shooting and work so much harder, because this cannot happen. And our nonprofit, Make Our Schools Safe, we have been fighting to get Alyssa's Law passed nationally as a standard level of school safety protection in every school across this country, so that if there is a life-threatening emergency, law enforcement can get on the scene as quickly as possible and take down the threat. Law enforcement needs to do their job. They cannot stand there and just watch as 17 people get shot and killed. Your job as a police officer is to go in, engage, and take down the threat. And if you can't do that, don't do the job.
We're willing to plead guilty early on for exchange for life. I'm wondering in retrospect if all of this was worth it and not just having that outcome on the straight.
No, absolutely not. He should have been given the death penalty from the get-go.
Will you be, Lori, after what you just said, I assume you're going to be there when Scott Peterson goes on trial?
Absolutely. I just want to end with, please, don't show the shooter's face. Stop showing the shooter's face. No notoriety. 17 people were killed. Let's remember them. Remember Alyssa Alhadeff. Remember the 16 others. And you could be a part of helping to stop the next school shooting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So sorry again for your loss.
And you were just listening to Alyssa Alhadeff's mom and dad, very passionate words. Her dad, for instance, said, quote, "I am beyond disappointed. I just don't understand. I am disgusted with the legal system and the jurors. What is the purpose of the death penalty?" He said, quote, "This is a stain on this world. It's a stain on Broward County." You can just see the emotion pouring out of them. Just some of the parents affected. These are the loved ones on your screen, the 17 lives taken on February 14th, 2018. And just moments ago, we found out that Nikolas Cruz, the confessed shooter, will be spending the rest of his life behind bars without the possibility of parole.
And that's why these parents are so upset. That was the Elon Alhadeff who testified during the sentencing trial, saying, "My firstborn daughter was taken from me." His victim impact testimony, heart-wrenching. He talked about how he can only see his daughter's infectious smile through videos now. Clearly upset after that verdict came down. Vanessa Medina right there in front of them asking those questions. Vanessa.
So he will never get to see his daughter's infectious smile again. However, Nikolas Cruz, as you heard, they're just so angry, will get to live. He gets to spend the rest of his life behind bars when this family continues to mourn the loss of their precious daughter. So while they were able to prove that this crime was callous, that it was heinous, that it was cold-blooded, it was premeditated, they still were not able to prove that these mitigating factors that we're talking so much about were that his mental illness was just that much more. The aggravating factors did not outweigh his mental illness. So we do know that Fred Gutenberg also, he is on his way here. Again, he lost his child also that day, Jamie, and we've heard he has been very outspoken over the last 4.5 or so years. He has gone to Washington. We're also seeing Tony Montalto. He lost his daughter, Gina. He is making his way to the podium now. And Tony, we know that today has to be such a hard day for you. Explain to the viewers, of everyone watching, what is going through your mind and heart right now.
Well, we'll start off with it's pretty unreal. that nobody paid attention to the facts of this case, that nobody can remember who a victim is and what they look like. I know every day because I see my beautiful daughter's face around our home in my dreams, and I miss her very much. I'm going to read you a prepared statement. Today's ruling was yet another gut punch for so many of us who devastatingly lost our loved ones on that tragic Valentine's Day at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. 17 beautiful lives were cut short by murder. Heinous, pre-planned, torturous murder. And the monster that killed them gets to live another day. While this sentence fails to punish the perpetrator to the fullest extent of the law, it will not stop the mission of the families of Stand with Parkland to effect positive change at the federal, state, and local level to prevent school shooting tragedies from shattering other American families.
Tony, what did you think when you were hearing those verdicts being read? As it sunk in that this was a life sentence, not a death sentence recommendation, what were you and your wife Jennifer and everybody else thinking?
Well, I can only speak for myself and my wife since we've talked about it, but I'm sure some of the other families had similar thoughts. How can the mitigating factors make this shooter, who they recognized committed this terrible act, acts plural, shooting some victims more than once on a pass, pressing the barrel of his weapon to my daughter's chest, that doesn't outweigh that poor little, what's his name, had a tough upbringing? I mean, society has to really look and re-examine who and what is a victim. Not everyone's a victim. My beautiful Gina, the other sons, daughters, spouses, and fathers, they were the victims here. Our justice system should have been used to punish this shooter to the fullest extent of the law, not as an act of revenge, but to protect our nation's schools, to stop others from attacking the future of this country when they attack our schools.
Do you not see how it's possible that one juror could have found one mitigating?
If one juror was honest when they chose the jury and they said they could see their way to the death penalty, and unanimously they all found that the aggravators are proven beyond a reasonable doubt, I think that one juror possibly perjured him or herself.
What message do you have to this jury, and does this send the wrong message to the nation? The nation is watching.
Well, again, what do we want as a society? Do we want people who commit atrocious acts against the future of our country to be punished to the fullest extent of the law? Or do we want to excuse them because they had a tough time growing up? I promise you, throughout this nation, there were people who had a more difficult time growing up than this shooter, who have been failed by the school system more than this shooter, and who have had less services provided than this shooter. And they did not choose to enter a school with a high-powered weapon and pull the trigger 139 individual times. That is cruel. That is thoughtful. And that should have been punished to the maximum extent of the law.
We know that the gunman studied other shootings, and now he gets life. For the next teenage gunman or the next young person who decides to get a gun and study and follow, what does a sentence like this do for the safety of other children?
I think that it puts all school children in jeopardy. It certainly sends the wrong message. This shooter did not deserve compassion. Did he show the compassion to Gina when he put the weapon against her chest and chose to pull that trigger? Or any of the other 3 times that he shot her? Was that compassionate? When we heard, in his own words, what he said regarding other victims, Meadow Pollock, Carol Cochran, Peter Wang. We heard what he said, what he thought. Was that a sympathetic figure?
Could they have done anything differently? I mean, in retrospect, you wish they had acted differently either during the case or when they were insisting on going to trial?
I will say that the state did an excellent job. I haven't heard one of our families complain about the case they put on. They were factual. They were realistic. Their rebuttal was excellent. I just think people forget what facts are these days.
Tony, you said this in your statement a little bit, but what does this do for your efforts outside the courtroom? How much work you've been putting in at state, national level? What is this? Does this reinvigorate what you're doing?
Well, Families with Stand with Parkland have always been dedicated to preventing other families from suffering through these horrific tragedies. Perhaps now we'll have to fight to make sure that victim impact statements, real victims, are taken into account. The real victim statements when you go through a penalty phase, so that we can all remember our loved ones, the kind, compassionate, innocent students and teachers that went to school that day and never returned to our loving families.
Are you going to be here for Scott Peterson's trial?
Had enough of the courtroom for a while, but I imagine that we will come back and do what we did here. We will all represent our loved ones. My wife Jennifer and I will make sure that we represent our beautiful, forever 14-year-old daughter Gina in any court proceeding. We will continue to put forth our efforts to secure her legacy through both Stand with Parkland and the work we do locally, statewide, and nationally, as well as the Gina Rose Montalto Memorial Foundation, which we set up to keep Gina's light shining in this world, because she should not have been extinguished by this monster.
We do live in a country and a state and a county where, a sizable part of the population does not believe the death penalty, that they believe that life in prison is fine for. Can you explain?
I'll trade places with you.
Can you explain?
I'll trade places with you. That's why.
Can you explain why?
I've answered it 3 times. Trade places with me, you'll change your mind.
Tony, does this change the way you feel about people in Broward County and when you feel that the community is letting you down in some way?
Yeah. Gina, my beautiful, kind, bubbly, bright daughter, deserved better than she got from the schools, and certainly from this jury, from our sheriff's office. She deserved better. Even from the FBI, who let us down. Let's not forget all the failures that led to this day. But the failures wouldn't have mattered if the shooter didn't choose to pull that trigger 139 times, to make a voluntary effort to pull that trigger, spewing death from that gun every time he pulled the trigger. Anything else?
Thank you so much.
Thanks, folks.
So you just heard from Tony Montalto, another parent of another victim from the Marjory Stoneman Douglas shooting. That is Gina Montalto's father. He started off by saying no one paid attention to the facts of this case and no one remembers who a victim is and what they look like. I know every day. I see her face every day. I see my daughter's face in my dreams. This is yet another gut punch. We want to listen in now. Jamie Guttenberg, the father, is now speaking.
I'm stunned. I'm devastated. There are 17 victims that did not receive justice today. My daughter, you'll notice she was the 16th of the 17 to be read today. She was shot running down a hallway. Now, what mitigating factor was it that they used on her? Were they going to suggest that he didn't have the fine motor skill to shoot that gun as she was running down the hallway? This jury failed our families today. But I will tell you, the monster's going to go to prison, and in prison, I hope and pray he receives the kind of mercy from prisoners that he showed to my daughter and the 16 others. He is going to go to prison, and he will die in prison. And I will be waiting to read the news on that. He should have received the death sentence today. There was no mercy for a murder that was planned over a long period of time. And that was, sadly, as proven by the state, executed. I don't know how this jury came to the conclusions that they did today, but 17 families did not receive justice. Because of what happened to our families, we are all in this position now of doing the work that we do around this country to keep this from happening to another family. And this decision today only makes it more likely that the next mass shooting will be attempted.
Tony, Fred, can you talk to us about what you were thinking when you realized that he was not going to get the death penalty?
I looked at my wife and I said shame, anger, devastation. Listen, I've gotten to know you and the others over the years. I've spent the past almost 5 years preparing myself for today, mentally, physically, because I visit my daughter in a cemetery. And the idea that there was at least one juror who I have to imagine didn't tell the truth to get on that jury, and who was never, ever, ever going to vote yes, because they agreed on all the aggravating factors. The truth is, the defense, for those of you who watched this trial as diligently as I did, the defense failed at mitigation. If you looked at the cross-examination, their witnesses fell apart. In the closing argument, the defense team actually referenced the neighbor, the guy who lived across the street, who spent one moment with that killer in their entire time. Okay, they did not prove mitigation, but yet a juror accepted the notion. A juror did not tell the truth to get on this jury, and because of that, 17 families have been failed, and it is what it is. This is the way the system works, right?
Do you think that they should have had maybe the trial outside of South Florida or Broward, if possible, and moved to another venue where you would got a fairer, maybe, or a different Georgia?
I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I can tell you this. The state did an amazing job of proving the aggravators. The state did everything they possibly could have done. I will also say the defense, to be a defense attorney in a situation like this, I get it, you have a job, but it doesn't mean you need to lose your humanity towards the victims, which they did, okay? And their inability to ever, for a second, either in the courtroom or outside of the courtroom, have a human moment with us, a civil moment, was despicable. Looking at attorney Tamara Curtis take her middle finger and rub it up and down her cheek when she lost an argument in the courtroom, and then to start laughing with the killer over it like an immature punk child, I will never, ever, ever forgive that moment. But that's who they were. So I will tell you, the state did its job. Whether or not doing this in another county would have made a difference, you go through a lot of people to pick a jury. I don't know. I don't know.
What do you do moving forward? This I know it wasn't going to bring any closure, and I know it makes your work just that much harder, and you're going to continue working hard. But, you know, him getting life would have been some sort of closure for these families. What do you do moving forward? How do you let go of this anger?
The first thing I do moving forward is I go visit my daughter at the cemetery because he killed her. And that's what I have to do. The next thing I do moving forward is everything I can to prevent the next one of these from happening. The next thing I do moving forward is everything I possibly can to remind people how important the next election is and voting, because we do have the ability to do things in this country to reduce gun violence through our vote, and we need to do them. So I'm going to continue doing what I do, and I'm going to go to the cemetery, and I'm going to tell my daughter what happened today, and I'm going to tell her I love her and always will.
Do you believe in any way a life over death sentence here? What message that encourages or discourages to the next young person who gets a gun out there and thinks about doing the same?
That person is planning a shooting now. Let's face it. And that person now believes that they can get away with it. I'm still, and some of you know me, I'm not often stunned, but I am stunned by this verdict today. And I think anyone planning a shooting right now sees that there's a path to avoid the death penalty where it does exist. And the death penalty does exist, by the way. There was no reason they couldn't impose it. But you know what? His defense counsel in the closing arguments made one of the most bizarre statements I've heard in a closing argument when she said, well, if you don't give him the death penalty, he'll just end up dying in prison anyway, of natural or some other causes. That was his defense counsel who said that. So right now, I'm hoping she got it right.
Fred, is there any sense of small relief that you don't have to go to that courtroom anymore? You don't have to see him anymore?
I would have gone to that courtroom every day the rest of my life to get the right justice. So, no. He did what he did. The only possibility for relief ended for me 5 years ago almost when he shot and killed my daughter. I was prepared for the rest of my life to seek justice, and I could not be more disappointed in what happened today. Anything else? Thank you all. G-U-T-T? Oh, Guttenberg. Thank you. I'm sorry? No.
You just heard from Fred
Sorry.
Guttenberg. That is Jamie Guttenberg's father. He started his statement by simply saying, "I am stunned, I am devastated. This jury failed our families today." And we have heard that from other family members. We want to go back now because it looks like another family member is speaking once again.
My name is Debbie Hickson. My husband, Chris Hickson, was one of the murder victims. He was the adult that ran into the building to try to stop the shooter to do something to save other people. And I'm just completely devastated and shocked by this verdict. To me, what it says to me, what it says to my family, what it says to the other families is that his life meant more than the 17 that were murdered and the 17 that were shot and the thousands of people in that school, in that community that are terrorized and traumatized every single day. Even if every single one of those mitigating circumstances was true, which we all, I think, believe are not, but even if they were, how does any one of those mitigators outweigh those aggravating factors that they all agreed were true? How do you say, yes, it's cruel, that it was heinous, that it was planned, and we all agree on that, but oh, he might have had a mental illness or he had trouble growing up. I have a son with special needs. I have a son that checked all of those boxes, or a lot of those boxes that the shooter did as well. And you know what? My son's not a murderer. My son is the sweetest person that you could ever meet. This person had services. He had love. He had the best upbringing his mother could give him. But even if he didn't, how does that outweigh cruel, heinous, planned? It doesn't. It just doesn't. I don't care who you are. There's no way that you could look at those mitigating circumstances and believe for 1 second that they outweigh the aggravators and that the life of that person is more important and more valuable than the life of the 17 that were taken and all of the other people that lived through that trauma every single day. So I'd like to say I have no words, but apparently I have a lot of them.
Debbie, for those jurors, if they will be watching this later, or do you want to know what went on in that deliberation room? Like, what were their thoughts?
I agree with what a lot of people have said. There has to have been someone who maybe thought they could. Maybe they did. I also believe in grace and giving people the benefit of the doubt. And maybe when they're sitting there and you're asking them questions and they think, yeah, I can do that. But when faced with that decision, that it just maybe was something they didn't have in their makeup to be able to do. But they really should have asked themselves that question harder before they agreed to sit on this jury.
Debbie, yesterday you told me that you thought that if there was a death penalty verdict, that would sort of allow you to perhaps close the door on the anger phase of what you've been through and move on to the healing phase. What are you thinking now?
Definitely that anger phase is going to take a little longer to move through. Because to me, like I said, here I am thinking that they're going through yes, yes, yes on those aggravators. How can you say yes to every single aggravator and then no to the death penalty? Beyond a reasonable doubt, they believe that they proved those mitigators. So it will have to be something I resolve within myself, with my family, because really right now it feels that his life is more valuable than Christopher's, and that is not true. Never.
Ms. Hickson, do you believe that the FBI, the Broward Sheriff's Office, and now the jury has failed your husband's terrorism? Has failed him?
I do. In a lot of those instances, there was an opportunity to stop the shooter before he even got through figuring out his plan. BSO took a long time to get there, and now again someone else believes that someone's life is more valuable than my husband's, and that makes me, I can't even give you the right words how that makes me feel right now.
As a member of the school board now, do you think this makes it more difficult for the schools to stop this kind of
prevent from taking place?
I don't know if it makes it more difficult for schools. We are working very hard to increase our security. It does and it should say something to society that we have to look at who we allow to own firearms, how we address mental health in our communities, and where we give grace when it's warranted. So.
That means you don't know how many jurors wanted to go with life.
Correct.
But did you expect a longer, more involved discussion among the jurors to maybe sway others on death, as opposed to the speed at which the jury came back here?
It's a good question. So clearly the aggravators were very easy to go through. I think all of us would agree that 100% were all 7 of them without a doubt completely proven. So in the defense, if you listened to the defense's closing statement, they basically told them that they couldn't, if one person said life, you were done. Like, you weren't allowed to have that. So honestly, I don't know how much of them are, what they're able to do, but it seemed.
The opportunity to engage the other jurors.
Correct.
I want you to reconsider. Did you expect more of a debate within that jury room versus the speed at which they came back?
To be honest, I thought it would not take as long, because if you clearly saw the aggravating factors, that mitigating could never, there are some mitigating factors you could check off, but I personally don't see how one single one of them weighs heavier than any of those 7 aggravators. So I thought that it was done earlier or quickly, because they all said, yes, there are mitigating factors, but 100% they do not outweigh all of these aggravators that we did. So shocked at the outcome, but I didn't think it was going to take them a whole long time to do that.
And I have one other question, which is, I saw you leave the courtroom with your son. You told me in the past the difficulty of explaining to him about his father's death. What did you explain to him today, or how did you explain to him?
Of course, he was very upset, and more, I think, because he felt the room, us being upset in the room. But we just tried to explain to him also that this person is still being punished. So at the end of the day, I've said it a number of times, life or death, our life doesn't change at home. We don't have Chris. Our life, our family is not whole anymore, and we move through the process of how we get through each day. So this doesn't change what happens in our house. It changes emotionally how we feel about society. I think in general, the fact that you could think that someone who murdered 17 people because he had a mental illness, which I don't think any of us would disagree. There's no normal person that's going to do what he did. But that does not outweigh the aggravating factors that were proven in this case.
What would you want to say to the shooter today if he could say
I think that he should give thanks to God that someone had grace and mercy for him that he did not share with those other people. And keep in mind, my husband was one of those that he came back and shot again, because Chris survived. He would have survived if he hadn't come and shot him the 3rd time. So I hope that he understands the gift that he's been given. I doubt that he will. But I do hope that he understands what that gift is, and that he's somehow able to take that and do something different than the trajectory he's been on for all of his life.
Did you believe in the death penalty before you got this death?
I did not. And I would have been one of those people that would have thought, we can rehabilitate people, that it's not up to us. And it's been a struggle for these last 4.5 years to feel so strongly that this person doesn't deserve to walk on the earth, but you find yourself in a different position and you change your mind. But it's a struggle for sure.
Do you have any thought on why they wanted to see the gun? Did anything go through your mind? Did that signal anything to you? Did you feel more hopeful that it would be a death penalty?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. Yes, because they had just asked about the the cross-examination where they were talking about trigger fingers and things of that nature. So to feel how heavy, remember, 139 times he pulled that trigger in 7 minutes. So the idea that he was below average in being able to tap something is clearly not what's reality in this instance.
Do you think somebody wanted to feel the gun and to get an idea?
I would guess so. And, you know, some people maybe just wanted to see it. Who knows? So anyway, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie.
We also have Broward County.
So you were just listening, Deborah Hickson explain her thoughts, another emotional reaction. Let's go back in and listen.
Thank you for being here. You know, this dreadful and horrific crimes committed by the school mass shooter in Parkland on Valentine's Day 2018, it's forever changed our community. It'll continue to impact us forever. The parents and families of the school children and staff members who were lost in this massacre, our hearts are with them. We hope that they know that all of us lost 17 wonderful people that day, and that our world is a poorer and sadder place without them. To the survivors, please know that you are not forgotten in this, and that we respect and salute your courage and all that you have endured. You know, when I was elected as Broward State Attorney, I promised that I would uphold the law. And I agreed that this community, not one person sitting in the office, should hear all the facts and all the evidence of this case, and that the community should make a decision about whether this mass killer should get the death penalty or life in prison. We thank the jurors for their service, for taking on this difficult task. We thank the law enforcement officers who went into the school. We thank the law enforcement officers who investigated this case and also arrested the killer. We thank our prosecutors and our prosecution team and the whole office for their dedication and service in ensuring that we presented all the facts and the evidence before the Broward County community. And we thank the courthouse staff. We also thank the witnesses. We thank the victims' families and the survivors for everything. As I spoke to some of the family members immediately after verdict, I thank them for their patience with us and their compassion. And I thank everyone who worked to ensure that the whole truth, the full story, was told about this tragedy with full transparency. To my knowledge, this is the first time that the full story of a community's loss and all of the relevant facts have been told about a mass shooting of this magnitude. We have not shied away from telling all of the horror, all of the loss, all of the devastation, all of the pain about this case. We hope that while there's no such thing as closure, there will never be closure. We'll never find closure. But I do hope that this will bring some measure of finality and justice to this terrible chapter.
Mr. Pryor?
Thank you.
Mr. Pryor, question, please.
No questions. I want to allow the families to be able to comment. It's about the families today. And so I will allow them to speak, and then we'll come back, okay? Thank you.
We'll come back.
So you just heard from the Broward State Attorney, but we've been listening to family members, those in shock and in awe and angered by today's verdict. The jury announcing that Nikolas Cruz will spend the rest of his days in prison. Here's another family member we want to listen to.
It's been 1,703 days since the murderer committed the mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. And if this was not the most perfect death penalty case, then why do we have the death penalty at all? There's no doubt about the fact that the verdict should have been the death penalty. I believe that our state's attorneys, okay, all of them, all of our state's attorneys, whether it be Mr. Sachs, whether it be Carolyn McCann, whether it be Jeff Marcus, Nicole, Stephen, Aaron, we could have not had a more perfect state's attorney group. No way. Mr. Sachs told me when we first learned that he was taking this case on, he said to me, I promise you that this will not just be another mass shooting. By the time we're finished with this case, Every single person who was murdered, people will know who they are. They will not just be a name, but people will know exactly who they are, will know a face, and will know everything about them. And that's exactly what he did. You talk about being disappointed. We are all disappointed, okay? All of us, because they could not have done a better job. They could not have proven their case any better than they did. We all know their case was proven. But again, we have jurors, and there's no doubt in my mind that somewhere along when they chose their jury, they had to be told, I'm pretty sure, that they would consider the death penalty. Somewhere along the line, one of those jurors had to have said, I know he committed these crimes, I know he deserves to be punished, but I can't be the one to put someone to death. And that is the only way that we did not get the death penalty. My son was murdered along with 16 other people, and this animal, okay, still is going to now have life in prison without parole. And let me tell you something, as far as I'm concerned, he's probably going to get taken out sooner than later if he did get the death penalty. Because we know that a death penalty case, I believe in Florida, takes a lot longer. I think it's somewhere, the average is somewhere close to 18 years, okay? I'd certainly be dead and buried before he would be. So as far as I'm concerned, the fact that he's going to go into some sort of general population, he's going to have to look over his shoulder every minute of the rest of his life. Just the way the fear in him, I hope he has the fear in him every second of his life, just the way he gave that fear to every one of our loved ones who he murdered, or the students and people that he harmed. He should live in that fear, and he should be afraid every second of the day of his life.
Just to add, okay, about fear, this is what my son saw. He saw the gunman as he turned and pulled the trigger. This is what the jury didn't think was worth capital punishment. Answer me why, how, that my son be shot by this animal like this. People need to see this. This is real. This is not a game. This is not a video. This is not a TV or a movie. This is real. The last thing my son saw was the gunman aiming at him.
And let me tell you something, we're not going to stop. I'm going to tell every single person here, we will never stop fighting. We are never going to stop fighting so that these animals can't go into, whether it's schools, movie theaters, places of worship, you name it. We're going to fight with them so we don't have to keep looking over our shoulder and wondering when we send our kids to school or our loved ones go to work at school or go to work anywhere, okay, that we could possibly never speak to them again. We're going to continue to fight, and we're going to make sure that that AR-15 and those assault weapons that killed our loved ones are taken off the streets. And that's what we're going to continue to do. Because this should not happen to anyone else. This should never happen. We should not have to worry about, even ourselves, walking around the streets that somebody's going to murder us with a gun that they illegally own or illegally own and have gone off the deep end somewhere and decided that they're going to take their anger out on someone else.
And this verdict today gives license to anyone who wants to claim they have a mental illness to kill people.
Sure, all I have to do is have a mental illness, not a problem, okay? One of my attorneys is going to do a mitigating factor that I'm a human being, okay? That's one of the mitigating factors. He's a human being, okay? And that gives him license to just, him or her, license to go in and kill people. This is ridiculous. This should be the case that makes people stop and say, oh my God, I better not do that because I can get, I could get the death penalty. This is the case now. You know what? I can do it, not a problem, and I can get off and I can have life in prison without parole.
Do you believe that one juror or more lied to get on this jury?
I won't say lied.
No.
Maybe when they were originally questioned, they thought they could do it, but when push comes to shove, maybe they realized that they couldn't.
We can't damn the jurors. Come on. I mean, if that's how I come across, I apologize. These jurors sat there since July 18th, day in and day out. let me tell you something. They're the people that we need to give therapy to, because here they are. They watched. They went into the 1200 building. They saw all the autopsy photos. They saw some things that we never got to see, and you certainly didn't get to see. I mean, they did their job. There's no doubt about it. But when push came to shove at the very end, like all of the aggravating factors, they all checked them all off. There was no doubt about that those aggravating factors were all checked off.
Some of the other parents, it seemed they were lashing out.
I'm sorry, I can't. It's going to have to be one at a time. It's hard enough to hear one. I'm sorry?
Your husband once wrote in the Sun Sentinel about having to sit through this and relive it.
This was 3 years ago.
This was
yeah.
3 years ago, I didn't know a third of what I know through the trial. If I knew what I know now, back then, I would never have said what I said. Okay, this animal deserves to die. He hunted all these people. He planned this for months. I didn't know that he had planned it for months when I wrote that article. No, I take back everything I said in that op-ed. He should die.
You mentioned that some of the parents who preceded you did seem like they were very angry, lashing out at the individual jurors. But you're saying that you don't believe the jurors themselves got involved. Do you have any sort of understanding of how one of them could have found a mitigating factor?
There is no mitigating factor at all that could overshadow, okay, the aggravating factors. There are just none. And I'm not sure. I mean, I can't speak for them, but I'm not sure that, you know, maybe an hour after we were all let out of the gallery, that people's emotions didn't come out in ways that maybe, I'm not sure that it's really anger at the jurors. It's anger at, you know, it's anger at the sentencing. It's
anger at the system.
Yeah,
okay?
it's anger, really.
It's
you
really
know,
anger at
I
the
mean,
system.
you can't go after a juror. They did their job. They went day in and day out. I mean, it's not easy. But, you know, totally anger at the system. I mean, I know we have a legal system, but is it just? I mean, let's ask ourselves that question. We certainly do have a legal system. I'm not sure it's so just all the time.
Justice was not served today.
We saw you looking at your son's picture in the courtroom, moving forward, now feeling that justice may not have been served for your son. Is it any different for you when you look at that picture? I know there's no closure, but now are you even more angry, or?
There's never closure, okay? This is a chapter that's closed. I'm not sure of the epilogue yet because I haven't really been able to process. It's a chapter that's closed. I'm never going to get closure. I'm never going to get my son back, whether it was the death penalty or life in prison without parole. Scott's not coming back, okay? That's just the way it is. I mean, a little aside, if you notice when they were talking about Scott and she was talking about the counts, they had a little bit of tumult, you know? That was my son. There's no doubt that was my son telling us, you know what, Mom, I'm here. But as far as closure, there's no closure. There's no closure when your son is murdered, okay? There is not. And for me, the anger stays here. Every once in a while, the lid gets taken off, but the anger stays here. The anger's always going to be here. And I'm going to tell you something. I never thought that I could be so ugly inside, but I wait and welcome the day that I get that call that tells me that that murderer was murdered in prison. And that's going to be a very happy day in my life.
And just one more thing. They talk about the victims, the 17 people who were killed. Every person in the Parkland community is a victim. Everyone. So don't play that down at all, okay? On February 14th, 2018, everyone here was a victim. February 14th is also my daughter's birthday. Imagine how we celebrate or don't celebrate her birthday. Imagine the fact that some of her friends don't like to call her on her birthday because they don't know what to say. My birthday is February 16th. I was making funeral arrangements for our son on my birthday. Everybody is a victim. There are no survivors of a mass shooting. There's different levels of victimhood, if that's a word. Thank you.
Thank you.
in again.
Hi everyone, my name's Lynn Chen. I'm Peter Wang's cousin. I'm here with my aunt, Linga, over there. We are just shocked by this result, and it's just so unjust. I think many people, we thought there's a very clear cut, this monster killed 17 people. Like, how can he live another day? And I feel a lot of jurors or the public do not really consider the factor of what happened, to the families, to the moms. My aunt has changed forever. She suffers from PTSD, and she constantly have hyperarousal. She cannot function normally. She cannot sleep, the constant insomnia. And we came here and thought that we could get a little comfort for my family, but no, they just pushed them further. And not just my aunt, all the moms that I saw in the fucking courtroom, they are suffering, and this result made them suffer even more. All the moms, now they are saying, okay, I guess this murderer who can murder my kid and still be alive. All their dads, they have to live knowing the fact that the murderer is in the jail every single day, breathing, eating, and getting help by their lawyers. Well, their kids was murdered on that day, and also, they were murdered they got multiple shots. The shooter came back, and they are saying all the excuses about mental illness, not getting proper help. The murderer came back and repeatedly shoot at all the kids. What about the kids? What about the families? It's not about the shooter. Why can't I do something that's helping them? Also, in my knowledge, there have been at least 4 students committed fucking suicides. Suicides, we're not talking about that. These parents who are of these suicidal kids, where is their courtroom? That one juror or more made this decision, but the whole system do not know there's more people gonna die. Suicide, more school shootings. This is insane, right? Everyone knows, right? This is insane. We need justice. All of your kids need justice. All of your kids in school. And now more people are getting motivated to do this shit. My aunt's dying. This monster literally said, I'm not gonna say it, but he was happy to see people dying. He had a little smirk on his face today. We have been quiet. We've been trying to follow the law, believing the system would help us, but it didn't today.
So you just heard from Peter Wang's cousin, clearly extremely angry at the verdict. We apologize for that profanity, but obviously she is so upset that her cousin was murdered. And Nikolas Cruz continues to live. He will live, as the verdict came down earlier today, the jury recommending life in prison. More family members now coming to the podium.
Spending months. Today, I believe justice was not done. After spending months and months listening and hearing testimonies and looking at the murderer, his composure, I believe justice was not done. The wrong verdict was given out today. First, I want to thank Mr. Satz, Carolyn McCann, Jeff Marcus. They worked and worked tirelessly for us to get, or to find out today that we have been let down by the jury. I'm sorry, 17 people died. 14 beautiful children. 14. 3 adults. 3 adults dedicating their lives to educating children died. And today we find out there's no justice for us. If this murderer had mental problems, he still managed to get a gun. He still managed to get an AR-15 to mow down our kids. Why was he allowed to get an AR-15? President Biden, it's been 4 years and I've listened to countless shootings, one after another, traumatizing my family, traumatizing our neighborhood, traumatizing Parkland and Coral Springs. And today, the wrong verdict was given. Someone killed 17 people, attempted to kill another 17, and we let them get away with it. We should have had the death sentence given out today because he took 17 lives and he attempted to take 17 more, and it could have even been more, and he planned it meticulously. And now you have sent the message out there to everyone. It's fine, get an AR-15, get a semi-automatic weapon, and you will just get off by pleading that you're insane. It's the wrong message. It's been years and years and years listening to the news, hearing nothing but shootings in this country. And today we let someone off that murdered 17 people in cold blood. How do you describe someone dying as bursting open their head? What kind of people are we? There should be an automatic penalty for someone that does that. All the 17 families are so angered. We had to listen to how he just came back and finished off our loved ones. There is no excuse in this country to have weapons of war on the streets. And if you do not get that, then something is wrong in this country. And there was one person with a gun on the school premises that day that my daughter died, and he did nothing to go into that building and to tackle that murderer. And I'm sorry, I have to say, as a black woman, I have to sit there and listen to black men being shot multiple times over and over again. And this animal killed 17 innocent, beautiful kids and 3 dedicated teachers, and he got away with it today, as far as I'm concerned. Anyone that listened to the testimony over these past months can see that he planned it, he executed it, and he just waltzed out of that building.
Do you believe that if you had been black, the outcome would have been different?
Black men are mowed down. Innocent black men are mown down all the time. The attitude towards kids, black kids in the school, it's different. I don't want to make this a racial thing, but from my experience, there's more aggression towards black kids. So, I don't know. I can't say anything about that, but maybe Scott Peterson would have gone in and taken him out. I don't know.
Do you feel like the state let you down, not the state attorneys, but the state of Florida, the jury system, the justice system?
Everything, everything. We moved from England, we came to this country. My daughter was a bright young girl. She couldn't even get into the gifted class because she was shut out. How do you get 100% on the test and get shut out? everything in this country is just so wrong. Something needs to change. We need to do better. We need to do better.
What was it like to be sitting in there? You had to sit for 50 minutes listening to every single time, hearing one thing, and it just, what was that like, those 50 minutes?
I didn't even listen to when the medical examiner was, I wanted a picture in my head of Helena, how bright, how beautiful, how fun she was. I didn't want that ruined by the murderer. The murderer has put images into all of our heads of the disgusting thing he did on that day. That's all I can say.
I figure you're going to be at Scott Peterson's trial?
If I can manage it. I don't know. This has been so exhausting. It's gone on for so long. Right now, I'm drained.
But do you hope he gets convicted for what he didn't do?
Yes, people are making excuses. Scott Israel said that he didn't have to engage. Why do you put that badge on? Why do you put that badge on if you're not going to go in and protect children?
Do you have any views on what happened with this jury? The family aggravators, but yet you said the mitigators, do you have any views on the process or what could have happened?
I feel that the jury was convinced at the end when the defense?
Yeah, defense.
When the defense team, especially the lady, kept on talking about soul. Oh, he had, you're going to have to think about this for the rest of your life if you give him the death penalty. They try to guilt trip, but they're not realizing that we have to live with this. We have to live with not having Helena in our lives. He is nothing to us. He's a monster. He doesn't deserve, as she said, grace and mercy. He doesn't deserve any of that. He's allowed to breathe, gets 3 meals a day. Where is my cousin? She's not here. I have to see my family go through the hell of this trial. We keep quiet because we're saying, okay, the system is good. We're going to get justice. It's obvious. 17 people, 17 children. And you cannot just say, give him the death penalty. This is going to be a precedent. What's precedent?
Yes.
Because basically, they can just say, well, look at this case. He shot up 17 people. I only killed 1 person. Why should I get the death penalty?
Yeah, I can pretend.
I'm crazy. Oh, and then they were talking about the mother was drinking, and that's why, because in the womb, he's that way. There's plenty of people that have drunk and had kids, and they didn't turn out into killers.
Mass murderers.
Mass murderers.
I want to go deeper. As you know, February 14th in general is a national celebration. You've heard from some that have said that, she had to deal with a sibling that died on her birthday. My uncle, that's his birthday. His daughter died.
On his birthday.
I had to deal with carrying my daughter in 2018 and delivering her in June, knowing that my aunt no longer has her daughter. It's not okay. And so now we walk away with, especially for those who work in the school system, my mom's been a teacher for over 15 years. Why should I give my life to a system where I have to now be cop, teacher, defender? Why? You're not paying me enough for this. The sacrifice and the burden that we've put on the school system by not rendering justice is huge. Who wants to lay down their, obviously you're going to do what you want to do, you're going to do, but it's a heavy burden that you're leaving and a heavy weight that you're leaving on these families. My daughter is 4, never got to meet her cousin. And this is how long this has been taking. And then today, to hear that, okay, well, he won't get parole, but he's going to just be able to be alive. is more than discipline.
Michelle Thomas.
My name's Sefina, S-E-F-E-N-A, Cooper. Thank you.
And we just heard from relatives of Helena Ramsey, her mom, her cousin, and another relative, expressing what we've been hearing since this verdict was read earlier this morning. So much frustration, so much anger after learning that the death penalty was not what the jury recommended. In fact, the jury recommended life behind bars without the possibility of parole. As we take you back to what it looked like inside of the courtroom earlier this morning, Fred Guttenberg in there. Let's listen in to now Joaquin Oliver's mother and perhaps sister.
Good afternoon. I just want to start off by saying thank you to the prosecutors. Every single one of them were beyond excellent. I never thought I would be in this position, but here we are, and we couldn't have asked, I believe everybody is in agreement, to have a better team than the team we have. We are in shock, disgusted, something that is supposed to be extremely common, as all the other families have mentioned. How is this even possible? How are we standing here right now with this verdict when it should have been clear as day, extremely transparent, a death sentence? They've said it before, I'll say it now. If not now the death penalty, then when? When? And there is no excuse, nothing the defense said. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It shouldn't have been a case at all. No excuse for letting this piece of garbage breathe.
Well, here we are again, under these circumstances. We weren't expecting that this will be the verdict. The defendant accomplished his goal. The defendant made us feel bad, took us, our loved ones, away. The defendant saw the family suffering. The defendant fired 139 times, and he didn't do more because he didn't find anybody else to keep fighting. We are in the state that the death penalty is an option. After seeing the massacre that he did with all the 17th, plus other 17th, that they're crying and they're suffering, plus the entire community of Parkland, the entire community that belongs to Marjory, Stoneman, Douglas, that they live with this pain. Every single moment they're triggered with sounds is not served by death penalty. Why we have the death penalty as an option here in Florida? What is that for? That is my question. I am very proud to be having an amazing state team. They gave their passion. They came back from retirement. They believe that the justice has to be served. And it wasn't. I knew it wasn't because of them. It was because of one person wasn't agree with the result. I can thank the jury. They were coming here day by day, as Linda said. But that was that person who disagreed, and he made that difference. And today we don't have the justice served because of that. That's very unfair. That everything has to happen just for one person that decided not to happen. So now we gotta keep going, and we gotta keep living, and we have to work our best to find our peace. We're not gonna let the defendant take more from us that he's been taking during all this time. I hope that you all respect our moments. This is something that we have to digest. We need to live with this new reality. We're ending this chapter. We are going to open a different one. We're not going to let that defendant take more away from us. That's for sure. And that's my advice to every single kid that was injured and they were lucky to be here today. Don't let the defendant take more away from you than he already did. So thank you for being covering all this time. I hope that you don't forget that this situation keeps happening every single day in the entire nation. And we need to serve justice everywhere. And everywhere, everybody needs to get the attention they need, because these situations are very painful for all of us. Mira, la sentencia de hoy fue algo.
As Joaquin Oliver's family addresses the Spanish media, again, they've just been explaining that their job is not done. They have a lot of work to do here across our nation. Manuel Oliver, Joaquin's dad, who we have seen time and time again express his frustration, tweeting out this a short time ago. He writes, "Mass murderers, you get to live your natural life. You get your 3 hot meals a day. You get to shower every day, get medical attention. Hey, even a hobby or a new education. What a great message is this sending?" This is a message that so many other family members have been giving. Basically, if this happened today, if the death penalty was not recommended by the jury in this case, what message does that give to other potential mass shooters and to others? That is just the message that we have been hearing from all of these loved ones. Manuel Oliver also tweeted before that previous tweet, "Time to get back to Joaquin and his amazing movement. The world just saw how to get away with murder in a nation whose system is dangerously flawed. Let's fix this awful narrative. Viva Joac and the 16 other victims of the Parkland shooting."
We also heard on that same note, we heard from Tony Montalto, whose daughter Gina was killed in the shooting. He also said, "I will not stop our mission to effect positive change at a federal, state, and local level to prevent school shooting tragedies from shattering other American families." So that's really been a resounding message from all the parents, all the loved ones, clearly upset, clearly disappointed, have verbally said so, have been extremely angry, some of them yelling, some of them even cursing in that anger as a result of this verdict. Life in prison. The shooter will live out the rest of his life in prison behind bars, but he is living, and that is their point. If this shooting, 17 people killed, the death penalty isn't appropriate in this case, in what case would it be appropriate for? That was a question a lot of them were asking. We also just saw a tweet from the mayor, Miami-Dade Mayor Daniela Levine Cava. She wrote, "For over 4 years, South Florida and the nation has grieved with the families and members of the Parkland community. Today's sentence isn't the one many families hoped for and will never bring back the loved ones they lost. We continue to pray for all those who lost someone that day, that they can heal from unthinkable tragedy and find the peace they so desperately deserve. And we keep our neighbors in Parkland in our thoughts today, tomorrow, and forever." And that's certainly the case with so many people we've heard from today. It wasn't what they wanted, but they will continue to fight for justice and making sure that other families don't go through what they are going through.
And as you continue to see those live pictures on the left side of your screen, this is Joaquin Oliver's mother. She's addressing the Spanish media right now, so that's why we're giving them a moment to do that. We also know that Meadow Pollack, you may remember her father, Andrew Pollack, was very outspoken when this first happened. He's kind of stepped away from the stage not too long ago, and so we haven't heard from him. His son, Hunter Pollack, did tweet, though, a short time ago, actually 3 hours ago, a photo of his sister, Meadow Pollack, what seemed to be a birthday picture. So even if the family members are not here in the courtroom, they are now speaking to the media. Wherever they're at, it's, you know, you can imagine that they are tuned in, listening, and reacting in their own way to what the jury announced earlier this morning. This, again, is what it looked like inside of the courtroom, the Broward County courtroom, earlier today, as the verdict was read, moments before the verdict was read. Tears, we saw tears, we saw people with their faces in their hands, we saw Scott Beagle's mother looking at a photo of him on her phone, Gina Montalto's dad there, others shaking their heads. I mean, it has been an emotional day, and a day that so many have been waiting for more than 4 years. This is Alyssa Aladef's mom, her dad to her left, her grandmother to her right. And we heard from them earlier this morning there at the podium, giving their reaction. And like I said, Vanessa, everyone just expressing the same anger. We saw some more angry, others more sad, frustration. And they have pretty much all been saying that they're disappointed, but that their work is not done.
And that this sets a precedent.
Yep.
For the future, for any future, hopefully that is not the case, but if we know from past example, another mass shooting will occur, and their fear is that now mass shooters, potential mass shooters, will think, I can get away with it. We've heard that a number of times today. You just saw Alyssa's parents, Ilan Aladef, he actually spoke and testified during the sentencing trial. He gave his victim impact story and said, my firstborn daughter was taken from me, and he was waiting. He's been preparing for this day, and the first thing he said, they were the first people, the first family members to speak to the media this afternoon. He said, I'm disgusted with our legal system. I'm disgusted with those jurors. I'm disgusted with this system that you can allow 17 dead and 17 others shot and wounded, and you don't get the death penalty. Then what is the death penalty for, if not for this case? You are setting a precedent.
We heard from Fred Guttenberg, too, and he said a lot of powerful words, but something, Vanessa, that he said that really stuck with me. One of the reporters there asked him, you know, is there some sort of relief that you don't have to come back to the courtroom? Because he was there almost, if not all, every single day. And when he answered, he said he would have gone every day to that courtroom, every day, if it would have brought the right justice to his daughter. And it's just one of the many emotional statements that we've been hearing since that verdict was read.
Right. We also heard from Chris Hickson's wife. He was one of the teachers that ran in and tried to save a number of students. It looks like we're getting more family members coming to the podium. Let's listen in.
It took me a few minutes to collect my thoughts and to try to understand the emotions I was feeling after we heard the verdict from the jury today. As I was walking up here, I was informed that the vote was 11-1. One juror either didn't understand the facts in this case or was dishonest with themselves when they signed up to become a juror and would never have voted for the death penalty, because you cannot look at the facts of this case. Look at the cruel and inhumane way the 17 victims were treated. that he went back and shot again those that were already down on the ground. I've seen the video as part of the MSD commission. I saw him walk up to Coach Hickson and shoot him in cold blood as Chris Hickson was lying there on the ground. I will never forget that video. I will never forget what I saw that day. How you can process the evidence that was presented to you. And let me pause for just a moment and thank the state's attorney's office for the grace, the kindness, the professionalism, and the absolutely perfect job they did in prosecuting this case. They did everything right. They presented all the evidence, and we heard time and time again, each of those jurors understood the facts that were presented and the aggravators, yet somehow one of them thought that the mitigators that were presented by the defense, and let me pause for just a moment and reiterate what's been said before. This is a defense team that we understand as families, they have a job to do. But the lack of empathy and humanity shown to our families by this defense team, it's indefensible. And to argue that life in prison without possibility of parole was somehow better because he'd get his inside, I couldn't believe my ears. I can't even imagine a defense attorney making that argument. That shows you how low they will go. And of course, in their concluding arguments, they wandered into the absolute absurd to try to find some rationale to defend. And it worked. It worked with one of the jurors, and we're very disappointed. We came here seeking justice. We were hoping for justice. And unfortunately, we didn't get it today. Let me make a point about the one. I don't want to focus so much just on this one juror. Had one person done their job at the school district, had one person done their job at BSO, I might not be standing here today. We might not even have needed to have this trial because we wouldn't be here today. And it's unfortunate that we have to be here. This is where we are. What are you going to say? You just want to answer?
I echo all the same thoughts that have been said. For me, I want the most important thing is for the world to know that my sister, Elena, and the 16 others that were killed, they were beautiful people, and it leaves me with anger, sadness, and emptiness to know that, you know, none of us will ever get to see them here again, and that they were cut short. And the fact that they allowed this murderer to get off with life in prison seems unjust to us. And to the real victims in this situation. That's all. Yes.
When you're sitting there and it's sunk in that they're not voting for the death penalty, when you realize that, what do you think?
I don't know how you can look at all the aggravators and vote yes on every single one of them. That the state did its job. It proved beyond a reasonable doubt that those aggravators were in fact aggravators. It was unanimous, all of them. 7 for 3 of the victims, the teachers and staff, and 5 for each of the children that were murdered in school. And come to the conclusion that that somehow, you know, it's just one juror thought one or more of the mitigators was enough to override that. Look, this is how our system works. I get it. I understand. We knew going in that it needed to be a unanimous verdict with the jury. I just thought the facts were so overwhelming. The viciousness of what was done at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, I don't know how you can walk away. They saw pictures and videos that I haven't seen. We heard testimony from the doctors and the medical examiners about the absolute cruelty and indifference to the victims that the killer showed. I don't know how you can see that as a juror and walk away feeling good about that one juror did today.
Ryan, I know you've been working a lot outside of the courtroom since all this happened. In your mind, was today going to be a moment of moving forward? Do you feel like you got that, or do you feel like this is just another day in an ongoing process?
Today I was hoping we'd close a chapter. We're going to close a chapter either way, right? Nothing will bring Elena back to us. I've come to that realization now over 4.5 years later. She's not coming back. My ability to explain it to my son, her brothers and her sister, my wife, still don't have the words to explain what happened or why it happened. As much as I've learned about what happened and as much as I've seen evidence presented to the commission and otherwise, I still don't have an explanation for them that's good enough. She's not coming back. I knew that. But I had hoped that for all of the families, we would see some modicum of justice today, and we'll have to be satisfied with what came out of the proceedings today.
You were on the commission, you and Max probably know more about this than the other journalists, just because of what you did. Do you think that Cruz should have been institutionalized or locked up long before February 14th, 2018?
It's clear that mistakes were made, and that there were warning signs prior to him acquiring a firearm and putting his plan into place. I mean, we heard testimony in the trial here. He's been a problem since kindergarten. He attacked other students in kindergarten. So the school district was certainly aware of it. His mother was aware of it. The community in general, I think, was aware of what the possible threat, but action wasn't taken. So the lesson coming from this is that there are warning signs. They are real. I've learned subsequent to this, that over 90% of these school attacks, there are warning signs exhibited prior to the attack. And if we'll take them seriously, which was not done in this case, they were not followed up on, we can prevent these tragedies from happening. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Max Schachter. My little boy Alex was one of the 17 victims, and coming in here today, we thought we were going to get justice. We thought that finally the Parkland murderer was going to be held accountable for his actions, and up to this point he had not. He was violent from age 3 years old. The teachers were scared of him. He was a menace in all the classes that he was in. He prevented all the other children from getting a good education. And all this time, they prioritized his rights over the rights of all the other kids in his classes. And we finally thought that we were going to get justice. He planned this out. Everyone saw all the evidence that the state presented. He did research. He planned this out. He wore a JROTC uniform to disguise who he really was. He lied to the Uber driver so he wouldn't be found out, telling her that he had an instrument in there and he was in an orchestra. He is a sociopath, and he did this. He planned it out. It was premeditated. He said his intentions were to kill 20 people. The only reason he stopped was because he couldn't find anybody else to kill. He didn't think anybody was left in the school. And then he did this, and then for 3.5 years, he says he's not guilty. All of a sudden, he changes his mind, and he pleads guilty. He saw the writing on the wall. And We thought that we were going to get justice. We thought that he was going to be held accountable for his actions. All this time, he had no consequences. He was able to accumulate over 55 different disciplinary incidents in school. Law enforcement was at his house over 40 times, and he was never arrested. We thought that we were finally going to get justice for what he did to Alex and all the innocent others. And we're just devastated, my wife and I. We thought that we were going to get the death penalty today. It's so upsetting, dear, that one individual prevented that from happening. We sat through this trial for months, listening to all of this testimony from the defense, learning that people would call him, where he's received hundreds of phone calls telling them that they love him. It's unbelievable how you could love the worst high school mass murderer in history. It's just unbelievable. We're shocked and we're devastated.
You just feel defeated. I noticed that some of the jurors, and maybe you noticed it on the front row, there were two young men with the probation officer huddled in what looked like visible pain as this process was going on. The foreperson looking over at them with concern. To those jurors, did you see that? What were your reactions yourself as you saw that? There definitely seemed to be a striking difference in body language from those jurors.
Yeah, I was worried when I saw that, and I think what we're going to find out is that there was a lot of tension in that jury room, and you know, we don't know what happened. We'll find out, but it was just you listen to all the evidence and understanding what he did to murder, going up and down all those 3 floors of stairs and hunting down all of his victims, shooting them from down the hall, and then going over and executing them at point-blank range. How could you not give him the death penalty? And I think that one juror that voted for life is going to live to regret that for the rest of his life.
One thing that also sticks with me, I did the building tour after the jurors of that 1200 building, and as we were listening to the judge reading the verdicts, I was thinking to myself, this person obviously, even with that experiential evidence, even seeing the exact spot where your son died, they still walked out feeling like the defense's reasons for life outweighed that. What goes through your mind?
I think the defense used tricks at the end to just make people feel guilty and try to get them to not focus on the facts. But you know, it was the jury's responsibility to make a decision based on the facts. The aggravators way outdid the mitigating factors. You know, we've had many people in our country that have been born and mothers have smoked or drank. They don't go on to become mass murderers. And to not punish the worst high school shooter in U.S. history after what he did to Alex and all the 16 others is just a travesty of justice, and it's just heartbreaking. Thank you very much.
So 7's Vanessa Medina has been there, right there, asking questions. We want to go to her in just a short time. But again, Alex Schachter's dad, Max, expressing how angry and disappointed he is.
He tweeted earlier, prior to the shooting, the Parkland murderer said he wanted to kill 20 people. He stopped after killing 17, including my sweet little boy, Alex. Afterwards, he didn't want to die. He wanted to live. And today he got everything he wanted while our loved ones are in the cemetery. So another reaction from another loved one upset at this verdict. We want to go head over to Vanessa now, who has been right there listening to these family members. Heartbreaking, Vanessa.
Well, as you can imagine, every single emotion that a parent could possibly feel, you saw it, you witnessed it for yourself as you've been watching, from disappointment to anger to sheer sadness. These parents and loved ones, like Debbie Hickson, said she will no longer see her husband. They will no longer see their children. And Nikolas Cruz will live to see another day. So the families, the heartbreak, you could just feel it. You could sense it. Some screaming, some so angry they couldn't even control themselves, cursing, just so upset with what they thought was a slam dunk case. They thought for sure, I mean, with everything that they showed, from the video of him going on that rampage, from the scene inside of that school, remember, it was left untouched. There was still blood on the floor. There were laptops still open, books still open, where this moment in time ended for these 17 victims in Parkland. And they also heard testimony of how Nikolas Cruz said he wanted to kill 20 people. He wanted to just change Valentine's Day for everyone. He wanted everyone to suffer. And for these families to not get their just verdict, to now have to live through this, they say it was a chapter has been closed. There will never be closure for them, but a very sad day for many of these families, heartbreaking day for many of these families. They had to live this trial for 3 months. They've had to live this nightmare for the last 4.5 years, and now they will have to live the rest of their lives with the fact that Nikolas Cruz will live throughout his days. I think it's only fitting that that we do mention and we do say their names, because there were 17 victims. We have Peter Wang, Carmen Schentrup, Joaquin Oliver, Carol Loughran, Martin Duque, Jamie Guttenberg, Gina Montalto, Nicholas Tourette, Alex Schachter, Scott Beagle, Aaron Feiss, Chris Hickson, Alyssa Al-Hadef, Meadow Pollock, Helena Ramsey, Luke Hoyer, and Elena Penny. 17 victims didn't get to go home to their parents. And now you just heard it today throughout the afternoon, 12 jurors deciding that Nikolas Cruz did not deserve the death penalty. So Broward County has been changed forever, and this verdict, which was unexpected, doesn't change much for these families. They still have to go home, and those rooms are still empty. Joaquin Oliver's room is still left untouched as he left it that day. Just a tragedy for these families, a tragic day for Broward County, many of them saying that justice for them today was not served. So reporting live in Fort Lauderdale, Vanessa Medina, back to you guys.
Vanessa Medina, an emotional day for those families and for our entire community. 7's Nicole Insalata joins us live. Nicole, you've been watching this alongside with us. What are you hearing on your end?
Well, that was the question, was what the jurors would ultimately take from all of these months of testimony. You know, they heard the aggravators on the side there of the state attorney's office, and then they heard the mitigators from the defense side. They say all these things that they believe that Nikolas Cruz led Nikolas Cruz to become what he was. And the defense also said periodically, look, he has already pled guilty to all of these. No one is disputing that. But what we are saying and would like the jury to take into consideration are what they consider to be the mitigators. And in some ways, that's what made it very confusing for some in the beginning listening to the verdicts being read back, because there were a lot of questions that these jurors had to answer. Did you find aggravators? Did you find mitigators? But then it came to that last question on each of the charges, each of the names. Did the aggravators outweigh the mitigators? And in every single one, it was a no. And that's what it took, I think, some people a second to sort of digest, that they felt like all of the things that made this crime as bad as it was, according to the state attorney, those did not outweigh the things that the state said had happened to Nikolas Cruz to make him be what he ultimately became. Now, this jury, we have a little bit of sound we can play you from one of the jurors, but I can tell you it was 7 men, 5 women, a diverse bunch. When they left here, we watched them. They did not want to talk to us here at all. They were brought to their cars by deputies. There were slamming of doors, trying to get out of this garage as quickly as possible. Before we show you that little bit of sound, though, I did want to tell you that off camera, I tried to communicate with this one juror, a young woman, and she was tearing up. And she said, she didn't want to talk about it, but that she was very upset while she was putting all of her things in her car, because of course they were sequestered for the last night. So she said she was just very upset, didn't want to talk. Obviously it had taken a toll on her as well. But here's what another juror had to say.
Very tough, very tough case. Anxious, nervous.
Are you happy that it's over?
Very happy that it's over.
What led you to your decision?
I don't want to talk about that right now.
Any words to the families, victims?
Very, very sorry for their losses.
Has this been the hardest thing in your life?
Hardest thing in my life.
Can you tell us a little bit about what went on in there?
No, I can't tell you anything about what went on.
How are you feeling now that it's over?
I'm happy that it's over.
What's your first plan now that it's over?
I don't even know.
Again, one more time to the victims' families.
Very sorry.
How are you feeling?
Very, don't even know. Don't know.
Thank you.
So, you know, we've heard some of the victims' families mention that they believe that there was just one person who may have held out, and why this is the sentence that we have heard. And that is what happens in a case like this. It only has to be one person to change it from, you know, even if it's a unanimous, everybody else. If everybody else agrees it's a death penalty, but one person says no, that they believe those mitigators outweigh those aggravators, then that's it. It's a life sentence. And it does appear in each of these charges with each of these victims, that is indeed what happened. At least one person, because that's what the charging documents actually say. They say at least one person, one or more people. So that's ultimately the way this system is set up, and you've seen some of the family members now refer to that in particular. Obviously, it doesn't make it any easier. Reporting live in Fort Lauderdale, Nicole Insalata, back to you guys.
And Nicole, we know you, alongside Brandon Beyer, have been following this case for years. We want to now move over to Brandon Beyer, who is also at the courthouse, to tell us what he's seeing and what he's hearing there. Brandon.
Well, we've seen the last of the families now leave the media room, which is off to our left here, walk down this long hallway past the courtroom where this trial took place, and then into the elevator bed to make their way out of the courthouse. I thought it was interesting because as the verdicts were being read, and you just started to hear of life after life after life, and it started to become apparent that the jury had made their mind up, and that was the way it was going to go. Just an absolute somber mood coming over these parents when they realized it wasn't going to be what they had hoped for all these years. And then they left. Most of them walked quickly past a camera that we've set up in the hallway. It's been there most days throughout this trial, in case they wanted to make comments or react to anything that had happened throughout the day. Quickly left, went downstairs, and then obviously there was something coming over them, many of these parents, where they said, I need to talk about what just happened in that courtroom. And they started to make their way back up. They came up the elevators, they went through security. Again, there's 2 security ports to get to the 17th floor where this trial is taking place. The initial security downstairs that everyone that comes inside the courtroom has to go through, and then there's one just for this floor alone. So they went back through that security, walked down this hallway into the media room, stood in line, and then poured their hearts out as they answered questions and talked about what happened today and the justice that they say they didn't get, that they've been waiting for all these years. So to say that just a gamut of emotions, from sadness to anger, shock, disbelief. I feel like you can pinpoint moments in so many of these family members as they experienced those range of emotions watching the events unfold today. So, we've heard from the family members. We heard from Harold Pryor, who is a relatively new district attorney here in Broward County, elected during the last election, but he allowed for Michael Satz. It was an agreement between the two, who's been nearly 50 years, was the district attorney here in Broward County. You'll stay on that case. You'll still be the lead for the Marjory Stoneman Douglas. At that time, it hadn't even been a plea deal. There was a possibility that this went to a criminal trial. But Michael Satz stayed on board. Didn't even see Harold Pryor, that I can recall, in the courtroom. But he did come down today, or did make his way to the 17th floor. and issued a statement on behalf of the State Attorney's Office, which he's now running. So he offered his condolences to the family, thanked the jurors for their service, and then we continue to hear from families throughout the day. For now, we are live in the Broward County Courthouse. Brandon Beyer, 7 News.
All right, Brandon Beyer, thank you for that live report. We have had a very emotional day. Those families, we're thinking of them all, of course, and of the entire community, because as one parent said it, he believes that this is a stain. This has put a stain on Broward County and a stain on the community. And it's a message that we have been hearing throughout the morning today.
And we know that this trial actually isn't over. November 1st, they're going to be back in court. The sentencing trial is going to continue on that day because they do want to give the other victims, the other family members, their time to give their impact statements, to give their testimony as well. So we know the judge is going to hand down her sentence that day, which we now know is life in prison. That verdict, the jury has made their decision today. Nikolas Cruz will spend the rest of his life in prison. He will not be sentenced to death.
And we, of course, will have much more for you on 7 News throughout the day today. For now, I'm Alex Diarmas.
I'm Vanessa Borge.
Some unexpected expenses are bigger than others. Introducing the Amscot Installment Cash Advance from $100 to $1,000 with no credit checks and flexible payment options. That's more money and more time to pay it back.
Laminate floors can take a beating and still look great. Now at National Floors Direct, you can get an entire room of laminate flooring installed the next day for just $5.